right. It's about that time. The 2026 NFL schedules have officially dropped, including for our very own Philadelphia Eagles. And, bro, I got to say, looking at this 2026 schedule for the Eagles, there is not a team on here that is just head and shoulders better than the Eagles. Like, there's not a team on this schedule that is just like has a 10 out of 10 chance of beating the Eagles, regardless of whether it's a home game for us or a road game for us. Like, there's no team on the schedule that we can't dog out. Like there's no team on the schedule that we cannot beat in the 2026 season, and that's without AJ Brown. Like, I'm looking forward to the 2026 season as if AJ Brown is not a part of the team. Like, I'm preparing myself. Like, I'm looking at the schedule, I'm looking at these individual matchups, I'm looking at like these position battles. Like, I'm looking at everything going ahead without as if AJ Brown is no longer a part of the picture. And with AJ Brown out of the picture, like with the current team that we have on the roster outside of AJ Brown, there is still no team on the schedule that is just head and shoulders above the Eagles or that has a 10 out of 10 chance of beating the Eagles regardless of location. So I'm looking at this schedule. There's no reason for me to believe that the Eagles at the most don't lose at the most lose more than 4 games. Like, there's no reason for me to believe that after looking at the schedule, the Eagles lose more than 4 games. I honestly think at the very least, the Eagles could honestly end up with only 3 losses on the season this year going through the 2026 season. It's very possible. Like, at the most, I think the Eagles come out with 4 losses, but at the very least, it's very possible the Eagles could only get 3 L's out of this entire slate. Only 3 L's. And honestly, the hardest games of the season for the Eagles are going to be from within the division. So I definitely think looking at this team from top to bottom, roster for roster, even with who we have in the different coaching positions right now, without AJ Brown, I still think this Eagles team is capable of really capable of putting up 13 to 14 wins on the year. With or without AJ Brown, this team can still put up 14 to 13 wins on the season. For sure. For sure. Like, if I'm going team for team, like if I'm looking at the 2026 season for the Eagles, I think the Eagles realistically could go 13-4 or 14-3. At the very least, the Eagles are going 13-4 on the season. We start week 1, the Commanders. I think this will probably be one of the toughest tests for the Eagles this season. Revamped offense, revamped defense with the greatest rookie quarterback to ever play the game. I think that's going to be a dogfight, but with us being at home, I still think that's a W. I think we're going to end up splitting. Splitting games with the Commanders, but we're taking week 1 against the Commanders. Titans week 2 on the road. That's a dub. No offense, hardly any weapons last year. No weapons this year. That's an easy dub. The Bears in Chicago. Honestly, I would have said this was a tough game earlier on in the offseason, but looking at all the holes in that secondary, that was really one of the biggest reasons why they had the season they had last year. So many holes in that secondary now. No CJ Gardner-Johnson, no Kevin Byard, no Jaquan Brisker, no Nahshon Wright. That's a dub, I think, for the Eagles on the road. Rams at home. The Eagles own the Rams at this point. Whether it's regular season or the playoffs, the Eagles always find a way to beat the Rams. Matt Stafford and Sean McVay, they've never been able to beat Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni. Nick Sirianni has Sean McVay's number for some reason. I think that's a dub at home. Jags away on the road. I think that's a dub. Trevor Lawrence is not a killer. BTJ is getting locked up by Quinion Mitchell and Tariq Woolen. That's a dub. Panthers, that's going to be a tougher game than I think a lot of people think. I still think that's a dub. Cowboys at home for us, I think that's a dub. I think we're splitting with the Cowboys. I think we're taking the home field advantage on that. Commanders away, I think they're taking that one in DC. Giants, we're sweeping the Giants this year. That team did not improve at all to me, in my opinion, whether on defense or on offense. I don't see that as a better team. We're getting our lick back this year for sure. That's a sweep. We're taking the Giants for sure at home. Steelers, Drew Aller and Will Howard are not beating us. That's a dub. Cowboys away, they're taking that one on the road. Cardinals away, I think the Eagles are flying high in Arizona. I think that's a dub. No quarterback for them right now. Colts, respect to Shane Steichen, I think that's a dub. Seahawks, now this is where we get a little dicey. Like, I think Seahawks and Texans, if there are any teams on the schedule that are capable of beating us, it's the Seahawks and the Texans. 2 top 3 defenses in the NFL going into 2026. Talented offenses, extremely well coached. I think it's possible we get 2 back-to-back L's in that week. Those are the two. If we do lose this season, like if the L's that we do take this season, it would be to those two teams. I'll give those 2 back-to-back L's, Seahawks and Texans at home. But then it's on the up after that. 49ers away, the San Francisco retirement home. That's an easy dub for the Eagles. We're getting our lick back from the playoffs this year. That's a dub for sure. Giants away, like I said, that's a dub. I think the Eagles could go 13-4 this year. 13-4. We could possibly go 14-3 if we're really able to catch the Seahawks on a bad day, because who honestly knows what that offense could look like without Clint Kubiak this year? We know how vital an OC change can be for a unit that was successful. I think we could go 13-4 this year, but we do have a chance of going 14-3 for sure on going into this year. Like, if there are any two teams that are going to beat us based on this schedule for the Eagles, I think it would be the Seahawks and the Texans for sure. Like, outside of the division, like, I think we're splitting with the Commanders. I think we're splitting games with the Cowboys. Outside of the division, if there are two teams on this schedule that are most likely to beat the Eagles, it would be the Seahawks and the Texans. Those two teams, complete defenses, elite defenses. They have nothing but dogs on that defensive side of the ball. Texans probably have the best defense on paper going into the 2026 season. They're both extremely well coached. Mike Macdonald for the Seahawks, a defensive genius, it looks like right now. DeMeco Ryans, another defensive genius in his own right. Two teams that are extremely well coached, but then they also have dogs on the offensive side of the ball. JSN, Offensive Player of the Year for the Seahawks. Nico Collins, a healthy Tank Dell coming back for the Texans. You know, not to mention both of these quarterbacks, a Super Bowl winning Sam Darnold, you know, who isn't the most consistent quarterback, but is capable to execute with the talent around him. And then CJ Stroud, who, once he does have his guys healthy, he plays like a top 5 quarterback in the league. Former Offensive Rookie of the Year. You know, so if there are any two teams that are capable of beating the Eagles on this schedule outside of the NFC East, it would be the Seahawks and the Texans for sure. It would be the Seahawks and the Texans. But looking at the NFC East, honestly, the toughest games for the Eagles this season could come just from within the division. Like, I honestly think the Eagles are going to split games this year with the Commanders and the Cowboys, just because of, honestly, how talented these teams look right now on paper. Like, the Commanders and the Cowboys both had two of the best off seasons of any team in the NFL. Like, both of these teams really basically plugged up most, if not all, of their holes. Like, you look at the Commanders, their biggest concern last year was age. They were the oldest team in the NFL. This year, they might be one of the youngest. They got significantly younger on defense and added some more youth on offense. On defense, that defense is looking stacked right now, by the way. They draft Sonny Styles, who is a freakish athlete, but on top of that, they bring in some younger vets as well. Leo Chenal, a Super Bowl winning linebacker with the Chiefs. Adafe Owe, one of the hottest edge rushers that was on the free agency market this offseason. Clavon Chason, a Super Bowl runner-up edge with the Patriots. You still have a Jordan McGee who is still on the roster, who I think could have a breakout year. You add you retain Mike Sanders still. Trey Amos is coming back healthy. You bring in Charles Omenihu, which I think is going to be huge. You retain Dorrance Armstrong and Dietrich Wise, two guys who were really sack leaders when they were healthy early on in the season. You know, so honestly, the Commanders plugged up all their holes. They got younger on defense as well, giving Jaden Daniels some more weapons. The Cowboys, their defense was the problem last year, but now their defense is looking like a totally different unit. They might have one of the most underrated D-lines going into 2026. Kenny Clark, Quinn Williams on the interior of the D-line and at that D-tackle duo. They got a lot of edge rushers they could use this year. Rashawn Gary coming over from the Packers. They draft Jaysean Barham and Malachi Lawrence, two of the most underrated pass rushers in the draft class this year. Then they draft Caleb Downs, a guy who could be a field general from that safety position, super versatile DB, can guard just about any position or just about any skill position on the offense. You know, so honestly, both of these teams filled up all of their holes. And honestly, the toughest games for the Eagles this year could come from within the division, just because of how stacked the Commanders and the Cowboys look this year. So I honestly think the Eagles are going to split games this year with the Commanders and the Cowboys for sure. But the Giants, the Eagles are sweeping the Giants. The Eagles are sweeping the Giants. Like, the Commanders and the Cowboys, they can give the Eagles a run for their money, a run for our money. But the Giants, the Eagles are sweeping the Giants this year. Like, you look at every other team in the NFC East. Every team in the NFC East other than the Giants, the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Commanders, all three of those teams got better. All three of those teams got better. Whether it was in the draft, whether it was in the free agency, whether it was coaching changes, all three of those teams got better. The Giants are the only team in the NFC East that did not get better. They just didn't get better. Like Malik Neighbors, he should be healthy, going into the season, so that's a big plus. But I don't think Malik Neighbors significantly makes the Giants a much better team than they were last year with what they did this offseason. Like, honestly, looking at the defense, the Giants defense is going to be worse than it was last year without Dexter Lawrence. Even after drafting Arvell Reese, which is just bringing another edge onto a team that was already edge heavy, Arvell Reese is not making up for that impact that you lose in Dexter Lawrence from that 0-3 technique in a D tackle. So the Giants defense is not going to be better than it was last year. The offense could be better than it was last year. Could be better, but I think most likely it'll stay the same because I don't think Jackson Dart is super accurate as a quarterback. And Cam Skattebo is probably 1 to 2 good hits away from getting a serious head injury from sustaining CTE. So I think the Giants are the only team in the division that did not get significantly better than they were last year. The Commanders, the Cowboys, the Eagles, all teams that got significantly better than they were last year. All teams. So honestly, the toughest games for the Eagles this year will be from within the division, will be from within the NFC East, but that does not include the Giants. The Eagles are sweeping the Giants this year. The Giants are the only team in the division that are going to get swept by another team in the division. They're the only team. So for sure, the NFC East is going to be some comp. But, speaking of the NFC East, looking at our season opener, the Commanders, honestly, this Commanders game for the Eagles at home could be a season-defining game for the Birds. Season-defining game. Because honestly, the Commanders, in my opinion, will be a playoff team in 2026. They will be a playoff team in 2026. A revamped offense, a revamped defense, added a lot of added a lot of youthful experience to both sides of the ball. Bringing in, having their franchise quarterback, greatest rookie quarterback of all time, Jayden Daniels, coming into this season healthy, like a guy who is potentially a top 5 quarterback. It's honestly playing with an underrated skill group with Terry McLaurin, Dyami Brown coming back to the mix, Chig Okonkwo coming over from the Titans. Then you have Luke McCaffrey coming back healthy. You have a backfield with Jacory Krosky-Merritt, Katron Allen, who could be a nice complement to Bill, a nice 1-2 punch in that backfield for DC. So honestly, the Commanders, in my opinion, are going to be a playoff team in 2026. And the way the Birds start the season and play against the Commanders at home could be a season-defining game for the Birds. Could be a season-defining game. Like, depending on the brand of football that the Eagles play with against the Commanders week 1, that could set the tone for the rest of the season. That could set the tone for the rest of the season because the Commanders, in my opinion, will be a playoff team in 2026. They have a talented defense going into this year. Odafe Oweh, Leo Chenal, Mike Sanders still. They still have Deron Payne, Javon Kinlaw, Tim Settle from the Texans. Like, bringing in Sonny Styles in the draft. They have a talented offense. Healthy Jayden Daniels, underrated skill group with Terry McLaurin, Dyami Brown, Luke McCaffrey, who had flashes last year, Chig Okonkwo, arguably one of the most athletic tight ends in the league, a deep backfield with Bill and Katron Allen. Like, this will be a playoff team. The brand of football that the Eagles play with against this Commanders team week 1 in our house could define the rest of the season because that's honestly going to be one of the toughest teams that the Eagles play this year, in my opinion. It's going to be one of the toughest teams the Eagles play. So this week 1 game against the Commanders could define the rest of the season, could set the tone for the rest of the season for sure. For sure. Like, honestly, I look at this Commanders team, bro, and I really don't think they're getting enough credit for just how much work they did in improving this roster. how much work they did in improving this roster. You look at the offense, a potentially top 5 quarterback in Jaden Daniels is like a guy who could be a potential top 5 quarterback. A underrated skill group, in my opinion, from Terry McLaurin and those receivers to a healthy version of that offensive line with Laramie Tunsil, Josh Connerly, who they drafted last year. You know, a deep backfield with Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, Katron Allen, Jerome Ford, a Rashad White, a pretty heavy backfield. Then you look at the defense, a defense that is much younger now than they were last year. Reinforced pass rush, reinforced run stop defense, a reinforced secondary. They bring in Adafe Owe, Leo Chenal, Clavon Chason, to name a few. They still have Dorrance Armstrong, Dietrich Wise, 2 guys who were sack leaders for them before they got hurt last year. So this Commanders team did a lot of work to its roster going into this coming season. So honestly, the Commanders to me could really be one of the toughest games the Eagles play this year within the NFC. We're not even talking about the division, let alone the NFC. I'm talking about the entire conference. The Commanders could be one of the toughest games for the Eagles this year within the conference, for sure. For sure. But outside of the division, the biggest games for the Eagles this year are going to be the Texans, the Seahawks, the Rams, and the Bears. For sure. Texans, Seahawks, Rams, and the Bears. I think the Eagles will wind up losing to the Texans and Seahawks and beating the Rams and the Bears. I think they beat the Rams and the Bears. But you look at all 4 of these teams, like honestly, the toughest outside of the division, the toughest games that the Eagles will have this year in 2026 will be the Seahawks, the Texans, the Rams, and the Bears. Seahawks, Texans, Rams, and the Bears. Like all 4 of these teams are playoff teams. All 4 of these teams are playoff teams. 3 out of 4 of these teams have an elite defense going into 2026, have a top 3 to top 5 defense, arguably going into the season. Like these are going to be the toughest games for the Eagles this year outside of the division. Like I think the Eagles will wind up beating the Texans and the Seahawks, or losing to the Texans and the Seahawks, and will wind up beating the Bears and the Rams. For sure. I think the Eagles wind up losing to the Texans and the Seahawks, but beating the Rams and the Bears. You look at the Bears, a lot of holes in that secondary now. A lot of guys that aren't there this year that were there this year. Kevin Byard, All-Pro. CJ Gardner-Johnson, obviously a former champion with us. He's got that DNA in him. Nashawn Wright, he had multiple interceptions last year. Jaquan Brisker, a secondary that led the league in turnover and takeaways last year. That was a big reason why the Bears had the success that they did. That's not going to be there this year. So I think that's a dub. I think that's a dub for the Eagles for sure. Then you look at the Rams. The Rams have never been able to beat the Eagles under the Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts era of football. Like Matt Stafford and Sean McVay have never beaten Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni, whether it was in the playoffs or in the regular season. I don't think that trend changes this year. Now the Rams are in much better. The Rams look like a favorite this year. They're super talented. They plugged up holes on their defense. They still have a super talented offense. But the Eagles are more of a focused team, I think, going into 2026 than we were last year. I think the defense is going to be better now that we're starting the season with a stud pass rusher like Jonathan Grenard. Still have a super talented defense, especially with the Tariq Woolen added in, plugging up that hole at CB2 at the CB2 spot. And then the offense is going to be equally as lethal, if not more lethal, kind of swapping out Mekhi Lemon at the slot receiver for an AJ Brown, with the other additions we made to the receiver room. So I think the Eagles, looking at the toughest games for us of the year this year outside of the division, looking at the Seahawks, looking at the Texans, looking at the Rams, looking at the Bears, I think the Eagles wind up losing to the Texans and the Seahawks, but we definitely beat the Rams and the Bears for sure. We definitely beat the Rams and the Bears for sure. But looking at that Seahawks game, I don't think it's a given that the Eagles will lose to the Seahawks. Like, I think if there's any couple of teams that the Eagles do lose to this year, the Seahawks will most likely be one of those teams. But I don't think it's just all said and done that the Seahawks have that game on lock, that they have that game locked up, that's a sure thing. Especially with it being in Philly. with it being in Philly, I think the Eagles have a really good chance of beating the Seahawks at home, especially when you look at the changes the Seahawks are how different of a team it's going to be going into 2026. Like, they still have dogs. They still have dogs on defense and offense. Like, they still have one of the best pass rushes in the game. They still have one of the best secondaries in the game with Devon Witherspoon, Nick Amanwari, who could have won Defensive Rookie of the Year this past year. But they're going to be without their offensive coordinator in Clint Kubiak. We know how vital an OC change can be to a productive offense. And they're going to be without their Super Bowl MVP in Kenneth Walker, which really changes up their whole run game. Honestly, changes up their whole offense, because the Seahawks were a run-heavy offense last year. JSN was just a stud. Like, JSN was cooking on a run-heavy offense. The Seahawks were a run-first offense. So the Seahawks going into 2026 without their Super Bowl MVP running back in Kenneth Walker and without their Super Bowl winning offensive coordinator in Clint Kubiak, I don't think it's all said and done that the Seahawks are just going to beat the Eagles coming off their Super Bowl win when we look at those two significant changes. Like, I don't think it's all said and done. I don't think it's crazy to say the Eagles can beat the reigning champs in Philly, a Seahawks team without their prior OC in Clint Kubiak and without their prior Super Bowl MVP in Kenneth Walker. I don't think that's crazy at all. I think it'll be a dogfight. I think if there's any team that can beat us, it would be the Seahawks. That would be one of the teams to beat us. But the Eagles have a really good chance of beating Seattle in Philly, of beating the Seahawks in Philly, especially when you look at the fact that they're going to be going into the season with a totally different offensive coordinator without Clint Kubiak, and going into the season without their Super Bowl MVP running back in Kenneth Walker, who is really the anchor of the offense. They're the anchor, given being that it was a run-first offense, like, for sure. Like, it is not a given that the Seahawks are going to beat the Eagles in Philly. It's not a given at all. The Seahawks are going to be without Clint Kubiak this year and their Super Bowl winning offensive coordinator, and they're going to be without their Super Bowl MVP running back in Kenneth Walker. This offense could possibly be totally different than what it was in 2025. Could be totally different. This Seattle team, you'll say Kenneth Walker isn't that big of a loss because they still have JSN, they still have Tyler Charbonnet, but this offense was a run-heavy offense. It was a run-first offense. Kenneth Walker was the primary attack for the squad. That sort of broke the ice, allowing JSN to wear down on linebackers and secondaries. Without Kenneth Walker, their Super Bowl MVP running back, this could be a totally different offense, especially without their Super Bowl winning offensive coordinator in Clint Kubiak. Without Clint Kubiak, like, we know how vital an OC change is, how devastating an OC change can be to a productive offense. We've seen that just with the Eagles almost every other year. Like, every year in between our Super Bowls, every year after our Super Bowls, before and after, we've seen how drastic of a change that can be. So the Seahawks heading into 2026 without Clint Kubiak and without Kenneth Walker, this could be a totally different offense, and I don't think it's all said and done that they would just beat the Eagles in Philly. Like, if anything, the Eagles have a really good chance of beating the Seahawks in Philly at home. For sure. 1000%. Now, with that being said, the Eagles have, looking at this 2026 schedule, bro, we really just need Sean Mannion to not screw it up. Like, we just need him to not screw it up. Like, the Eagles have all of the talent that we need. It's not an overly tough schedule. If Sean Mannion can just not be the squad's worst enemy or biggest obstacle the way Kevin Patullo was last year, there's no reason why the Eagles can't go 13-4 or even 14-3. There's no reason. Like, Sean Mannion does not need to be an offensive wizard this year for the Eagles to have a winning season. Like, we don't need Sean Mannion to run a Kyle Shanahan offense, an Andy Reid offense, a Matt LaFleur offense, a Sean McVay offense. Like, we just need Sean Mannion to run a balanced, efficient game plan, an efficient offense. Like a balanced offense that allows us to put our playmakers in positions to succeed. Like we just need just an offense that allows the Eagles to do the little things very well. The Seahawks thrived on that last year. The Broncos thrived on that last year. Like if we can run a balanced, simple Sean Payton offense, a Clint Kubiak offense, a Shane Steichen offense. Like if we can just run a balanced offense that is not overly complicated, that just allows our playmakers to win, to succeed, there's no reason the Eagles can't go 14-3 or 13-4 this year. There's no reason. There's no reason they can't do that. Like, bro, we honestly just need Sean Mannion not to screw this up. That's all we need. We just need Sean Mannion not to screw this up. The Eagles, looking at the schedule this year, the Eagles could easily go 13-4 or 14 or even 14-3 on this season. Can easily go. Like we have all the talent we need. We don't have an overly tough schedule. It's not a gauntlet of a schedule. We just need Sean Mannion not to screw it up. We just need Sean Mannion to not be our biggest obstacle, the way Kevin Patullo was last year. Like we just need Sean Mannion to not get in the way of the squad, in the way of the momentum. We don't need Sean Mannion to run a super complicated offense. We don't need him to be an offensive wizard this year. We don't need him to be Shanahan. We don't need him to be Andy Reid. We don't need him to be Ben Johnson. We just need him to run a balanced offense, a balanced attack between the run and the pass that allows our playmakers to succeed, that allows our playmakers to be in positions to succeed. An offense that sets up our playmakers for success. A simple offense that allows us to do these small things really well. That's how that's the type of offense that the Seahawks benefited from last year, doing simple things really well. And that's an offense that the Broncos benefited from last year. We just need Sean Mannion not to screw it up. If Sean Mannion is not our biggest obstacle this year, the way Kevin Patullo was, the Eagles could easily go 13-4, if not 14-3 on the year. Easily. That's all we need from bro. But speaking of Kevin Patullo, I don't think I've ever been you think you can't get more frustrated or disappointed in Kevin Patullo. Like you would think Kevin Patullo could not piss you off any more than he already has during this 2025 season. But somehow he does. Kevin Patullo had the nerve to say that he helped build the foundation of this Eagles offense. Listen to this BS.
I think really just coming in with Nick in 2021 and really building that whole entire program from the ground up. You know, I was the first one there with him, made a lot of the hires. We set the organization in place as far as culture, what kind of players we wanted, what kind of offense we were going to develop around guys. So just being a part of something from basically ground zero until, 2 Super Bowls and we win one, that's a big piece of it. So being able to understand, and I wore different hats. I was assistant head coach, I was offensive coordinator. I was heavily involved in the offense every year. And just understanding what it takes to get to that high level and achieve what everybody wants to achieve, I think is really going to be critical going forward.
Bro, what is Kevin Patullo talking about? Kevin Patullo did not build the foundation of the Eagles offense. Like what are we talking about? Like, bro, this man is literally trying to get credit for just basically sitting in the room. Like he's looking to get credit and get rewarded for just sitting at the table, sitting at the lunch table, sitting in the room with guys who were actually doing the work. Sitting in the room with guys like Shane Steichen, sitting in the room with guys like Jeff Stoutland, sitting in the room with guys who were actually building the foundation of the Eagles offense. Like, what is Kevin Patullo talking about? Bro, there are 3 names that helped build the foundation of the Eagles offense. There are only 3 names. Kevin Patullo was not one of those names. Those 3 names are Howie Roseman, Jeff Stoutland, and Jalen freaking Hurts. Those are the only 3 names that you can say helped build the foundation of this Eagles offense. We're talking about the best GM in football. We're talking about the best offensive coach and one of the best offensive coaches, the best offensive line coach and one of the best offensive coaches overall in the NFL, and the second best quarterback in the NFL and arguably the best winner in the NFL. Those are the three names that helped build the foundation of this Eagles offense. Kevin Patullo had nothing to do with that. All Kevin Patullo did was sit in the room. That's all Kevin Patullo did. Kevin Patullo is not getting credit for just riding the coattails of other people's success. We are not giving Kevin Patullo that praise. We are not giving him that credit. Like, I get Kevin Patullo has to talk himself up, basically in like basically how you do in a job interview. You got to talk about your strengths. You got to talk about your past achievements, your past accomplishments. Bro, anyone who really knows this Eagles organization, anyone who really watched the games last year, they know everything Kevin Patullo just said is BS. It's garbage. Like, everything Kevin Patullo just said about him helping build the foundation of the offense with Nick Sirianni and whatnot, it's garbage. You know why I know it's garbage? Because Nick Sirianni didn't even help build the foundation of the offense. Nick Sirianni maybe did more than Kevin Patullo, but Nick Sirianni didn't do more to build the foundation of the offense than Shane Steichen. He didn't do more to help build the foundation of the offense than Jeff Stoutland. He definitely didn't do more to help build the foundation of the offense than Howie Roseman, the guy who was putting the pieces on the field. And he most certainly did not do more to help build the foundation of this offense than Jalen Hurts. So if you're going to say, yeah, I came in with Nick Sirianni, and we built the foundation of the offense together, you can't, that's not even true, because Nick Sirianni hardly had a part to play in the foundation, in building the foundation of this Eagles offense. Like, what? What is Kevin Patullo talking about? Like, bro, there are only three names that you could say deserve credit for building the foundation of this Eagles offense. That's Howie Roseman, the best GM in football. That's Jeff Stoutland, the best offensive line coach, one of the best overall offensive coaches, and arguably one of the best talent developers in the NFL. And Jalen Hurts, the second best quarterback in the NFL, and arguably the best winner in the NFL. You cannot tell me that Kevin Patullo played a bigger role in building the foundation of this offense than any of those three guys I just mentioned. Not Howie Roseman, the guy who was a 10 out of 10 A-plus drafter almost every single year, who hardly ever misses on a draft pick. You can't tell me it's Jeff Stoutland, the guy who has continued to breed all-pro, Pro Bowl, Hall of Fame caliber talent on the offensive line. You can't tell me it's Jalen Hurts. You can't tell me it's Jalen Hurts. You can't tell me it's hate the way they paint me. You can't tell me it's accept the way they paint me, but it hurts just like the Philly Eagles. LA love my music, but I could do a show for 1 million people. You can't tell me Kevin Patullo played a bigger role in developing the foundation of this offense than Jalen Hurts. The dude who carried the Eagles to the playoffs his first year as a starter. The dude who went to a Super Bowl his second year as a starter, was an MVP candidate. The dude who went to 2 Super Bowls in 3 years, earning a Super Bowl MVP this past year and putting up Super Bowl MVP numbers in his first year in the Super Bowl. You cannot tell me Kevin Patullo played a bigger role in building the foundation of this offense than any of those three guys I just named. Than Hurts, than Jeff Stoutland, and most certainly Howie Roseman. Kevin Patullo did absolutely nothing to help build the foundation up of this Eagles offense. All he did was sit in the room. Kevin Patullo was in the meetings. He was in the conference rooms. He was listening in on the conversations. But Kevin Patullo was absolutely not the architect of this Eagles offense, was absolutely not a major reason, a major contributor to the foundation of this Eagles offense and success. There's no way. Absolutely not. Honestly, listening to Kevin Patullo's statement about him being a part of, being one of, him building the foundation of this Eagles offense, Jalen Hurts, Howie Roseman, and Jeff Stoutland should honestly be disrespected. Jalen Hurts should definitely feel disrespected by Kevin Patullo's remarks. Jalen Hurts, who was a playoff caliber quarterback before Nick Sirianni even got there, before Kevin Patullo even got there. Jalen Hurts, who went to 2 Super Bowls in 3 years with 3 to 4 different OCs, went to the playoffs 4 straight years with 4 different OCs, went to a Super Bowl twice in 3 years with different OCs. The guy who continued to win games this past year in 2025, despite Kevin Patullo's coaching. Jalen Hurts should honestly feel disrespected by Kevin Patullo's remarks, basically trying to convey that Jalen Hurts was successful, this offense was successful because of the work that Kevin Patullo did. Kevin Patullo did nothing to put this offense in a position to succeed. Not as an offensive coordinator, not as a passing game coordinator, not as a special assistant or whatever he was before he got promoted under Nick Sirianni. Kevin Patullo did absolutely nothing to progress this offense throughout his tenure in Philly. All he did was ride the coattails of Nick Sirianni, who kept him in some of those meetings, who kept him in those rooms, and ride off the coattails of the talent that was on the field in Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert and Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, that Pro Bowl, all-pro caliber offensive line. Other than riding the coattails of other people's success and ability and talent, Kevin Patullo did absolutely nothing to progress this offense in any form or fashion whatsoever. But so I couldn't be happier that he is now the Miami Dolphins problem. I could not be happier that he is now the Miami Dolphins problem, the team that is probably going to win at most 2 to 3 games this year. 2 to 3 games this year. I could not be happier that we are going into this 2026 season with this schedule, with the talent that we have on the squad this year on this offense, with or without A.J. Brown. I could not be happier that we are going into the 2026 season with this group without Kevin Patullo messing it up. Without Kevin Patullo being a threat, being a bigger risk to the offense than any other defense that we could possibly see in the near future. Couldn't be happier. But that's all we got for today's edition of No Shame with Shane. If you haven't already, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to all of our social media platforms. And I'll be back later on with more shameless takes.